Welcome to the Chuck Shoot Podcast, and thank you for taking the time to listen. My guest today is world-renowned speaker Chris Widener. So Chris had an interesting background. It wasn't easy for him growing up, but he persevered and got his college degree and began speaking, eventually rising up the ranks and becoming one of the best speakers in the business. Plus, he wrote books, he had a TV show, and some other businesses. And when you think of motivational speakers, most people think of Tony Robbin. Well, Tony's mentor was Jim Rohn, and Chris not only worked with Jim Rohn was Chris's mentor as well. They actually wrote a couple books together, I believe. One was the 12 Pillars of Success, which is a New York Times bestseller. Chris also had a TV show with Ziglar, who is also a very big name in the motivational success business. It was really fun chatting with Chris, very educational. Listen to the advice he gives, because obviously he's a very successful person and he studied this stuff and he's been mentored by some of the best in the business. I apologize for the audio on this one. We did a Zoom call. I've never done that before, so I recorded it through Zoom. So the audio is not great. I've never tried that before. It will have video that will be posted up on my YouTube channel eventually. But the audio is a little not the greatest, but it's still decipherable. You should be able to understand it and hear it. So it's not the worst either. So hopefully you enjoy it. Thank you. So welcome to my show here. So it's cool because you grew up in Seattle, same as me. So are you a Seahawks fan then?
I am. Yep. Seahawks fan. Do you prefer Charles or Chuck?
Chuck.
Okay. That's what I thought. It says Charles there, but I thought it was Chuck. I am a Seahawks fan. I'm more of a Mariners fan. My best friend is the president of the Seattle Mariners, and I've known him since this is his fifth or sixth year as the president. He spent 18 as the CFO, and I met him when we were both young guys in our early 30s in Seattle. We both lived in Issaquah, and his wife was in some Bible study with my wife, and somehow we met, and so.
That's very cool. Yeah. So let's talk. If that's okay with you, I'd like to get kind of your whole story. This is what I do. I don't know if you listen to my podcast, but I get people's kind of background, their life story, because your story is actually really interesting. Besides just growing up in Seattle and in Issaquah, where I'm from too. I mean, you had kind of a rough childhood. So, your dad died when you were 4. You probably don't even remember that. And then your mom worked in real estate. Oh, you do?
I remember coming home from school. I was in kindergarten, preschool. I remember coming home. I remember walking into a big, it wasn't our living room, but it was like a den, and there was like 8 or 9 of my family members there, and my Uncle John was there, and I walked up to him and I said, what's going on? He said, your dad died today. I'll never forget. I still can remember where I was standing and everything when my Uncle John told me that my dad had died that day.
Wow. That's obviously very traumatic thing to happen. And then on top of that, your mom was in real estate, so you guys would buy these houses and then and fix them up and sell them. So you moved you've moved 28 times, or you moved 11, you went to 11 different schools. So you obviously moved a lot. And I used to work in the school, so I know how hard that can be, the change can be on kids. So, but you tell me your experience with that. What was it like having to move schools and move houses so much?
Actually, one of the big things that I teach people is everything is based on your perspective, and any situation can have multiple perspectives, right? So in my circumstance, using this particular one, you could say, oh, that's really too bad. That's terrible. But I look at it as I have learned that I can go into any situation, anywhere, not knowing anybody, and make new friends. That's what moving so many times taught me how to do. That's what being thrown into a new school every year and a half, 2 years taught me. And so I suppose that it was probably tumultuous, but that's not what I remember from it. What I really remember from it is I still have friends from the 3rd grade that I'm still friends with on Facebook, even though I only went to school with them for a year and a half. A guy named Mark and a guy named Bobby. And the 3 of us, we were inseparable in the 3rd grade. And then halfway through the 4th grade, I moved. I'm still friends with those 2 guys to this day.
So it was, in a way, it was a strength for you, because you learned how to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true in any one of our circumstances. I talk about the mother of drunk drivers, the lady that started Mother Against Drunk Drivers. I can't think of a more horrific thing to happen than to have to bury one of your children. And I'm sure she still hurts to this day. But you know what she did? She said, somebody needs to step up and make sure this doesn't happen again. And she redirected all of that negative, hurtful energy into something really positive. And that is really, truly one of my core beliefs is there are multiple perspectives to any situation, and successful people choose the most positive or optimistic perspective in order to drive themselves through it rather than being buckled up underneath of it.
Yeah, but so besides moving, I mean, you really did face a lot of adversity that you've overcome, because besides just the moving, you actually had to go live with your aunt and uncle for for about 18 months because you were such a
Yeah.
trouble kid. And so your mom dropped you off at your aunt and uncle's. And I mean, that must have been traumatic as well. That's another thing where you're just like, wait, so my dad died, we've moved a bunch, and now I'm living with an aunt and uncle. So what was that like, going through that experience?
Well, my Aunt Rochelle and my Uncle Paul were rough characters. And, one of the real downsides to my upbringing was my mom I'm convinced now, posthumously, after she's passed away, I'm convinced she had what was called borderline personality disorder. My mom was both the best and the worst thing that ever happened to me. On one hand, she would tell me what a horrible, rotten piece of whatever I was. On the other hand, she'd tell me, you can do anything you want in life. And I can remember her walking me into a bookstore and saying, if all these people wrote books, you could write books too. I was 12. And I've got my 22nd book coming out this November, right? So
Yeah, that's awesome.
But living with my Aunt Rochelle and my Uncle Paul, they continued on with my mother's tradition of beating me. And so much so, I lived with them half of 4th grade, all of 5th grade, went back to live with my mom. And then like in the 6th grade, my Aunt Rochelle and my Uncle Paul got divorced. My Aunt Rochelle was my sister's husband. Pardon me, my mother's sister. Her husband was not a blood relative of mine. They got divorced, and I did not see my Uncle Paul again for 30-something years. I got a phone call from one of his daughters, my cousin, one day saying, my dad's going to die in the next couple days. He's in the hospital here in Seattle. Would you come and see him? He'd like to see you. So I went down there. I had to have been 40, something like that. And he was nothing like I saw him. The last time I'd seen him, he was a big, burly, beard, log truck driver. He worked in the woods and drove log trucks. He was a bad boy. I mean, he was a good old boy, and he was a rough and tumble guy. Well, now he was bald. He had no teeth. He was, he went from weighing 250 pounds to probably 170 pounds, and he was dying of cancer. And he profusely apologized to me for the ways that he had beat me and the physical abuse. And as I walked out of the hospital that day, I remember thinking to myself, that was really more for him than it was for me, because I had already kind of come to grips with it.
Moved on.
I just realized, people pass on what they had done to them for the most part, unless they make a choice. So, like, for example, when I got married and we had our children, we had a rule: nothing but the hand, nothing but the butt. Because when I was growing up, it was anything long and flexible, anywhere on your body, they could hit you with it. So, I still, as my kids were growing up, I believed in discipline and such. I just didn't let them run roughshod, but never anything but a hand and a swat on the butt, nothing else. Because I wanted to change, because my mom had been beaten by her dad, and I'm sure he was beaten by his dad. And so, we have to be self-aware enough to then say, how can I change this?
Yeah, no, that is amazing. I didn't even know this about you. So another thing that, was hard for you to overcome at a young age, you started getting into drugs and alcohol, which is obviously very common for a lot of people, especially with a rough background like that, a lot of pain in your life. So you were smoking opium, which sounds, I don't know a lot about that. It doesn't sound good though. It sounds like it could have been kind of dangerous. So talk about your experience with that and how you got mixed up with all that stuff.
In the 6th grade, I lived across the street from the junior high drug dealer whose older brother was the high school drug dealer. And we all sat at the bus stop together every day. And 7th grade, I think I was stoned probably every single day of school. Probably had something to do with my 1.4 grade point average that year. Wow. And so it started by living literally across the street from these two brothers. One was in the 7th grade, one was in the 11th grade, I think, at the time. And that's how I got involved with drugs. And then it just sort of moved out from there. I didn't like drugs in that I've never been the kind of guy who wants to be out of control. When I smoked opium in the 8th grade, I remember I was so high, I walked down the middle of the street in Ballard, which is a suburb of Seattle.
Yeah,
I think it's
Ballard.
called Market Street. I was walking down the street in the middle of Market Street, which is a main thoroughfare. And I remember that night just going, I don't ever want to feel that way again. So, it's not something that's good, and nothing I ever wanted to get wrapped up in. But I think I was really just lost. I mean, when you're a kid and you can't explain everything, like when I look back at it, I was pretty angry, but I don't think that I thought of myself as angry. I don't think I thought of myself as sad or, any of those kinds of things. I think I was just a kid trying to make it through life. No information.
Yeah.
And really no mentors.
And you wanted to take risks because you figured why not? And these kids were doing drugs and they liked it. So just figured what the hell. There wasn't really anybody telling you not to do that or any role models that were steering you in the right direction.
No, in fact, when I came home, this was my mother for you. My mother was a very laissez-faire 1970s bra-burning liberal, do whatever you want to do. I came home that night after being so high the first time I ever smoked opium, walking down the middle of the street. And I came home and my mom said, "How was your day?" And I said, "Well, it really wasn't very good." And she said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, I smoked opium today." And now most parents would go ballistic.
Yeah, my parents would have killed me.
"Did you like it?" My mother said, "Did you like it?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, don't ever do it again then." That was my mother's response to her 13, 14-year-old boy telling her he smoked a joint soaked in opium that day.
Wow, that is crazy. So, I mean, but you were getting trouble and you were getting in trouble at school. So you had school, because for a lot of kids, again, I worked in the school, so I know, when kids are going through these tough times at home, they actually take solace in school because that's the one place that's like things are consistent. There's discipline. You got to tell me about this. This has got to be a record because again, I worked in school, so I know how like kids get referrals. In 10th grade, you got 47 written referrals to the principal's office. How did they not suspend you, expel you, or kick you out?
I dated the principal's daughter, and so I knew him pretty well. And
wow.
And so on the last day of school, he called me in, and and he held up a stack of papers, and he said, "Do you know what these are?" And I said, "No." And he said, "These are your written referrals to my office this year." And I said, "How many are there?" And he said, 47. We need to not have this happen next year.
Yeah, but so they had patience with you, and they tried
on his the school year. Calling me in was one of the priorities.
But despite all this, despite the troubles, the drugs and the alcohol, the trouble at school, and all this stuff, you got a job working for the Sonics as a ball boy. That sounds like every kid's dream.
Yeah, at 11 years old.
How did you get that job?
Boy, I was popular So the guy that owned the Sonics at the time was a guy named Sam Schulman. And Sam was in the movie business as well. And my dad was the fifth partner at MBB&J, which is one of the world's largest architecture firms. They did the Seattle Center, not the Seattle Center. They did the Seattle Science Center. All those white, curvy kind of building. They actually just did either Google or Facebook's billion-dollar campus. I can't remember which one it was, but they did one of those two major campuses. And so my dad hung around with kind of a lofty group of people. We lived in Sandpoint Country Club. I'm sure you know where that's at, up there in North Seattle. Widely considered at the time the second most prestigious country club behind Broadmoor in Seattle, where all the old money lived. This was kind of the new money. And so he was friends with Sam Schulman's business partner. My dad dies at 4. We were season ticket holders. My dad, coming from Seattle, you'll love this, and the basketball fans will think this is interesting. My dad was one of the first season ticket holders of the Sonics, 1967. We had 4 front row seats. Our feet were literally on the court when we sat there.
Wow.
And he bought them the first year, $2 a ticket. It cost us $8 a game to sit on the court. My mom kept those seats. And so I grew up going to these games. Like everybody saw me because I sat on the court because it was just my mom and me. She sold the other 2 to my dad's sister and her son. And so I was a big fan. Everybody saw me. And then when I turned 11, I was in the 6th grade, beginning of the 6th grade. My mom reached out to this friend of my dad's. He reached out to the owner, Sam Schulman, and Sam Schulman said, "Sure, we'll give him a job." And so I think he called Frank Furtado, the trainer, and said, "You have a new ball boy. He'll be there tonight." So that's how I got my job with working with the Sonics.
And so you were able to hold on.
The first year I worked there.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the few things that saved me. Working for the Sonics. And then I was always in athletics. I played football, baseball, basketball. I started on all my teams. I was good. Those 2 things probably saved my life.
Okay.
Gave me something to live for.
So despite the drugs and all the trouble, you're able to keep on this job with the Sonics and you're able to play sports and you're able to graduate high school. And it was about age 17 when you kind of like, I don't know, you got to tell them about this moment because I don't think I hit this till I was in my maybe 30s or 40s, where you kind of had this realization like, oh, I'm kind of going nowhere. I need to change my path in life. Most kids do not figure that out at 17. It takes, and some people I know in their 50s and 60s haven't figured it out. So how did you figure that out at such a young age?
Yeah, so I was living in North Bend. You know where North Bend is,
Yeah,
growing up
my
in the
brother
Seattle
lives there.
area, and out at the base of Mount Si, lived out there,
Beautiful.
and I spent the night with one of my best friend, probably my best friend, and we were pot smoking buddies. And it was a Sunday morning, and his mother threw open the door at about 8 a.m. and said, "Get up, we're going to Sunday school." And I'm like, "What in the world is Sunday school?" I had no religious upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
nothing, like zip, zero, zilch, nada. And I'm like, "Well, I've tried everything else. I'll try Sunday school." Besides, she's demanding we get up, so off we went. We went to a little church called Mount Si Lutheran at the corner of 8th and Ogle in North Bend. And it was there that I met a youth minister, a good old boy from Montana, Helena, Montana. And he was just what I needed at that stage of my life. He was a good old boy. So he put his cowboy boots in my butt and told me, "You're wasting your life because you got a lot to offer." But then he also opened up this whole concept of God to me, and there being something bigger than me, and a bigger purpose than me, and all these kinds of things. And it began to open up my eyes to maybe a divine purpose for my life. And so it was really kind of the combination of a good male role model. Because
Yeah.
my dad died, I didn't know either one of my grandpas. My brother was 13 years older than me. He moved out when I was 4, married a girl who didn't like my mom, and so I didn't see him much growing up.
Mm.
We're close now. We're good friends now. But
Yeah.
I called him up when I went to get married. I called him up to be my best man, and he literally laughed. And I said, "Why are
What?
you laughing?" And he goes, "Oh," he goes, he goes, "You're serious?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm serious." He goes, "Oh, I thought you were joking." He said, "I would love to be your best man." And I said, "Well, you're my brother." I
Yeah.
wasn't close to him at all. I barely knew
Yeah.
him, but he was my brother. And
Right.
so I asked him to be my best man. And we're very close now. But growing up, I didn't have any male role models, anybody older. And that's what this youth minister was for me, a great role model for a man, and how to be a young man. And then just opening up the whole concept of God, and the fact that this world is a lot bigger than just me.
Mm-hmm. So, wow, that's huge. So then you kind of started getting on the right path. You did go to college, you got your degree in, I think, communications or something like that. And then did you do some other work before you, I know you started speaking in 1988. Did you do a little bit of work before that? Because how did
I,
you must have had a
I was
story to tell.
I was a youth minister.
Okay.
I was in northern New Jersey. And
How did you get out there?
I went to college for 1 year in Minnesota.
Okay.
I did my transfer. I transferred out there for a year, moved back to Seattle, and during that year, I met a girl who was from that church in New Jersey. During our senior year, she went home for spring break, and the pastor used to be her youth pastor, and he had her over for dinner, and he said, "We're looking for a youth minister," and she said, "I know just the guy." And he called me up. It's the only interview for a job I've ever done in my entire life. And
Wow. You didn't
I
even have an
was
interview for the Sonics job?
Nope, they just told me to show up, and I showed up. I mean, as long
Wow.
as I could throw a towel and hit somebody 3 feet away, I was golden.
Okay.
So
So this is your
as
first
long as I
interview ever. Are you nervous?
first interview, um, no, I guess not. I don't really remember it that much. And
Yeah.
they invited me out there. It was a really interesting little tiny church. It was about 80 people when I showed up, but they were some of the most successful business people in America. It was really kind of funny. The board was made up, and I was on the board as sort of the
Mhm.
youth representative. But the
Okay.
board had the number 2 guy at Prudential, the number 6 guy at Exxon, the former CEO of Sealand Corporation. There was a former quarterback from the NFL. I mean, just a really
Wow.
wildly successful people. And a number of them took me under their wing and sort of were great mentors to me, business wise, spiritually, just life. And one of my first business mentors was a guy who was the CEO of Mars Candies. He wasn't at the time; he was senior vice president of Mars Candies. He ended up becoming the president CEO of Mars Candies later on in '97 or something like that, '98. But it was really good for me. I moved back out to Seattle, but while I was being a youth minister, I was giving speeches because I was speaking at high schools, summer camps, colleges, universities,
Okay.
talking about overcoming, bad upbringings and things like that.
Yeah. So did you originally, you just did it for free then, right?
speaking. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, free $100 here and there.
Okay. So then eventually you started being able to charge about $500 a speech. How long did it take you to get to that like $500 a speech? Because now you're basically a paid speaker.
Yeah, 5 years, probably 4 or 5 years. Then I
Wow.
started charging. And then every time I had a new book or I had a new success or, something like that, I raised my fees over the course of my career.
Yeah. And so then you started a publishing company, American Business Network, which was later known as Made for Success. And you started you were also one of the first people that got onto the internet. And that was kind of when the internet, there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. So you just decided you're going to start writing these articles on success and business and just give it away for free. And you wrote over like 450 articles over the course of time, right?
Yeah, because I mean, it seems now everything is ubiquitous, right? You can find articles on anything. In 1996, not so much. So,
Right.
people would put up a website, but they had no content. So I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm going to start just cranking out content. I had my own email list with 100,000 people on it. I sent out emails every week.
How did
I
you
was building my
build
own
the email
newsletter.
list? Just over time?
Well, back then it was interesting. There were these email aggregators. So you would go to a site, and when you landed there, there would be a little pop-up. And the pop-up would say, if you like this site, you'll probably like these e-zines. And then you could click on the ones you wanted, hit submit, and it subscribed to all of them. And so I did that. I think they paid us 2 cents for every one we collected for them, and we paid 5 cents for every email they got for us for our subscription. So I was pumping out a lot of people to join other people's e-zines, but so much so that I barely ever paid anything for all the ones that they sent back my way. I mean, as long as you're sending them 2.5 times as many as they're providing for you, it's free, right? 2.5 cents or 2 cents and 5 cents. So I built my list primarily that way.
Okay. Then and you started doing speeches, are you traveling with the speeches at this point and traveling across the country? Yeah.
Yep.
And then
I remember my first big one I did, I got hired by Cisco Systems, and they took me to Sun River, Oregon, down in Bend is where we did that speaking engagement. I think I got $3,000 for it. That was like my first big one. Wow. I thought,
Yeah, that's big. So then how did you come across Jim Rohn? Because Jim Rohn is, for people who don't know who that is, I mean, I'm sure most people know who Tony Robbins is, and Tony Robbins' mentor was Jim Rohn. You actually wrote a book with him, 12 Pillars of Success.
Yeah, I spent the last 7 years of Jim's life. I started out, the reason they called me was I had been ghostwriting for a guy named John Maxwell, and I wrote his nationally syndicated column. And then they called me up, asked me if I'd ghostwrite for Jim. And I said, no, I don't want to ghostwrite anymore, but I'll co-write with him. And so they said, great. We wrote the Jim Rohn 1-year program, which is a 1-year success program based around 12 pillars of success. And then when we were done with that, I said, well, why don't we write a book that'll kind of synopsize it and then drive people over to join the full 1-year program. And that has become a big bestseller. And we've sold over 1 million copies of that book. So.
Oh, wow. That's insane. And then you guys had tell me about the TV show. There's a web television series on marketing and motivational content.
Well, there was a network called TSTN, the Success Training Network, and they put a lot of money into it. I mean, it was a real deal. I mean, it was a very wealthy guy out of Dallas who had the money to really fund it right. And so they gave me a TV show called Made for Success, where I interviewed successful business people and authors and politicians and all that kind of stuff. And then they wanted Zig Ziglar to do a TV show called True Performance. And Zig was getting older in age, and I was selling a lot of Zig Ziglar programs through Costco and Sam's Club through my publishing company. So I had a relationship with them. I sent them a lot of money every quarter in royalties. And so I was down there in Dallas for my show anyway. So they said, Chris, would you be interested in co-hosting Zig's TV show? So I had my own called Made for Success, and then I co-hosted Zig Ziglar's TV show called True Performance.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. So I read an article about you in Forbes. I think that's how I came across you. And you were saying that for people who want to be speakers as a career, 95% make less than $10,000 per speech, but that doesn't sound too bad to me. You said the sweet spot's around $6,000. But you said by 2013, you were making $20,000 a speech. That's like just insane to me, but it's competitive thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there claiming to be speakers that may not have the experience that you have.
Yeah, if you get fired from your corporate job, next step is speaker, or consultant,
Really?
or business coach, right?
Yeah.
When the National Speaker Association first started up in the 70s, I think there was 100 members.
Okay.
Now there's about 2,500 members and probably another 15,000 former members. I know some speakers bureaus have 20,000 speakers in their database. And if you want to see how many there are, go to LinkedIn and type your city in and say, Seattle motivational speaker or Phoenix motivational speaker, and you will find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who call themselves speakers. Most of them make no money at all. There are very few long-term professional speakers. There's a way to do it and a way to build your business. And a lot of people don't take it they don't view it like a business. If they were starting a Subway sandwich shop, they would do it like a business. When you're doing professional speaking, a lot of people just go, well, it's a hobby and I'm really good at speaking and I like it and it pays well. But they don't invest money in marketing or, their website or their materials or, any of that kind of stuff. They don't really take it seriously like a business.
Right, because you kind of can't just be, I guess you could just be a speaker, but usually even Tony Robbins, all these guys, they have books, they have DVD material, they have podcasts. You have a podcast. You got to do like all these different things. What's that?
The successful ones do. But I'll tell you what, when COVID hit, I said 80% of all speakers will be gone at the end of this because they have no way to make money. The only way they can make money. I know speakers that used to do pretty well. They're driving Uber now. They used to do 30 speeches a year at 10 grand a pop. Well, now you're not doing any speeches. And now you're making nothing because you don't have an audio program. You don't have a membership program. You don't have a video course. You don't have any of that stuff. You were hoping that somebody would keep hiring you. And, I know a guy that was doing 80
Oh, you're breaking up.
grand a pop, and any income for the last and so the successful ones, guys like Tony Robbins and those guys, and myself, we have programs and we lost the speaking income, but we didn't lose our income, our royalty income, our membership income, none of that.
Wow. Yeah. So some of the companies you spoke for, like you said, Cisco, Microsoft, General Electric, AT&T, Harvard Business School. So out of those, do any of them pay different? Like, does Microsoft pay the best? Because they got the Bill Gates money. So I'm thinking they would offer you the most money, or you just have a flat fee and say, this is what I charge.
It's basically, here's a flat fee. Here's what I charge. That's the thing about it is there's no cost of goods, right? If you're making jeans and it costs you $10 to make jeans and you sell them for $40, you can't really negotiate too much because you have you certainly can't sell it for $9 because you'd lose $1 every time. But in the speaking business, there's no cost of goods. So it's a little bit, people can name whatever price they want to name, right? They can do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. So I have a little bit of wiggle room on my speaking fees. It depends on if it's a new client. It depends on if there's spin-off business. It depends on if they'll let me sell my products there. There's a lot of different things that go into that equation.
Yeah. So, and tell me about the Harvard Business School. So was that intimidating at all? Because I would think that they have a certain level, like they would be maybe judgmental because it's Ivy League and, you didn't go to Ivy League. So why are you going to tell us what to do and what success is? We know more than you, and we're from Harvard, right? And that's got to be a little bit intimidating.
Well, they go to Harvard. They're not from Harvard yet. They're going to Harvard.
True.
None of those kids have done anything at that point.
That's true.
They typically go on to do great things, but I always quote Tony Robbins. Tony always says, "I have my doctorate in results."
Nice.
So I have my doctorate in results. I've done a lot. I've been successful, and they brought me in to talk to the students about leadership. It was one of the student organizations brought me in to speak to their organization, and actually I think they just paid my expenses. They didn't even pay me for that. But it's kind of like people say, well, if the president offered you a job in his administration, would you do it? And everybody always says, when the president asks you to do a job, you do it, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when Harvard Business School asks you to come and give a speech. Go give a speech because it's the most prestigious business school in America. And at the very least, it's on your resume.
Yeah, that's a good resume builder for sure. Another good resume builder you had was you wrote a book called Angel Inside, which I found this really interesting. I heard you talking about this. You talk about how Michelangelo's dad wanted him to be a politician, which is really interesting. And you talk about kind of, so how do people find their passion? Like, what if they don't know, but what if they don't know what they want to do? I guess is my question with that one, because Michelangelo, he probably knew that he wanted to do art, even though his dad wanted him to do politician stuff. What if you just have no idea what your talent is? How do you find that?
Well, I think you have a lot of questions you have to ask yourself. One would be, what is it you're passionate about? I mean, if you're passionate about surfing, you could go start a surf shop, or you could be a surf instructor, or you could make surfboards, or whatever. If you're interested in science, but you got to think about, what does the day-to-day look like? Is that a job that I'm going to be happy and fulfilled about? Sometimes the job that the topic that you're passionate about is not something you'd want to do every single day. If you're really, really passionate about science, I don't know that you would. You have to ask yourself, do I want to sit in a laboratory every day for 40 years? And I asked that of a young student recently, and she said, no, I can't imagine going to the same little laboratory every single day for 40 years. And so as we talked, I think that, probably what she's going to go into is law, but she could do law like patent and trademark, intellectual property, medical stuff, so there are ways to pursue your passion in a profession that pays you the kind of money that you want. I also work down here with a group called JAG, Jobs for Arizona. I can't remember the name, but it's basically for underprivileged kids who want to go to college, and we go down and we help them write their resumes and things like that. And the last time I was down there, they asked the question, what should I do for a living, and what should I do this, should I do that? And the first question I ask them is how important is money to you? Because if money is really important to you, that crosses out a lot of professions. Sure. I think it's one of the things that teachers realize too far into their career. On one hand, I want to teach youth. I want to go and I want to help kids. I want to teach math. I want to, whatever. That's their passion. Now they're 5 years into it and they're not making any money, and they're never going to make any money. My brother was a fireman, and he knew there was a top on that. He wasn't going to go and say, I deserve $300,000 a year. You want $300,000 a year, get a side gig, or quit your job and go do something else. He always had a side gig. He was a professional golfer before he was a fireman, so he started a little golf club making company, and he made money selling customized hickory shaft, old school golf clubs, like they originally were, with hickory shafts. And so he would make these golf clubs, and that's how he supplemented his income and things like that. So his passion was golf, but his job was, because he got into golf, the golf business. He was a golf pro at a few places. He hated it. Loves golf, hated the golf business. So he became a fireman and golfed for fun.
So finding out where to, whether you want, like you said, you want to do that passion in a job, because then that takes away the fun of it. When you're a golf pro, you're not actually just getting out there and golfing for fun. You're having to like teach people who suck at golf like me. And so, yeah. Well, it's interesting.
And people who complain about the price of the shirts and the golf thing and stuff like that. I mean, think about it. If you're into math, let's say you're really into math. You can be a math teacher in junior high for $35,000 a year, or you can study quantitative trading and go to Wall Street and make $3 million a year. It's both math. Both of them are math. Yeah,
true. Definitely. Well, getting back to the speaking that you do, the speeches. So I don't know if you've heard this story, joke that Jerry Seinfeld does about when he talks about giving speeches. The number one fear is speaking in front of people. The number two fear is dying. So he says his joke is like, if you're at a funeral, you're better off being in the casket than doing the eulogy. So how do people get over the fear of speaking? Not necessarily that everyone's going to be a professional speaker like yourself, but maybe they have to give a speech at a convention or an office meeting or something like that. What advice would you have for people who get nervous or afraid of speaking in front of groups?
I would tell them to remember that Seinfeld joke.
Yeah.
And here's why. Let's say you're the director of HR at a large company, and they say, we need you to talk to our sales group for 20 minutes, and there's 1,000 salespeople out there. Now, what most people are thinking is, oh my gosh, what if I suck? What if I'm bad? What if I flub my words? They're going to think I'm horrible. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm not going to be able to show my face around work. Blah, 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 blah. And you just let your brain spin out of control. What you need to remind yourself is they're sitting in the audience thinking, I'm glad it's him and not me, right? They
Yeah.
expect you. They expect you to suck. They expect you to suck.
Yeah.
You're the HR director. You're not a professional speaker. Now, if you pay me $30,000 to show up and I suck, they're going to be outraged.
Right.
So this is what I tell people. You don't have anything to worry about. Nobody's sitting there judging you. They're sitting there thinking, I'm glad it's him and not me.
Low expectations. So that's good to remember. And you also say
they have low expectations.
Yeah. You recommend that people memorize their speeches because all the most famous speeches didn't have PowerPoint. So you're not a big fan of PowerPoint then?
People can use PowerPoint if they want, but I always say, could you imagine Martin Luther King Jr. on the mall giving his I Have a Dream speech with PowerPoint? I have a dream that little black boys and little white boys will walk down the street. And I'm going to show you a picture of that right here on slide 1. I mean, it's the greatest speeches of human history were done without PowerPoint. And yet I think a lot of us rely on PowerPoint. I'm not opposed to PowerPoint though. And what I say about memorizing I don't say memorize your speech. I may have said it. I don't mean that. What I mean is know your stuff. And I'll give you an example. I had a guy come up to me. I gave a 30-minute speech one time, and I don't ever use notes. And a guy comes up to me afterwards. I was in Seattle, actually, in Issaquah. And he said, how in the world can you do 30 minutes with no notes? And I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I work at Boeing. I said, what do you do at Boeing? He said, I work on wing design. And I said, oh, okay, cool. If I said to you right now, if I hand you this microphone and say, give me 30 minutes on the design of a wing and how lift works and how it helps the airplane get airborne, could you do it? And he said, oh yeah, easy. And I said, there you go. You know your stuff. If you know your stuff, you can talk about it.
Well, speaking of wings, you say that you don't think anybody in the speaking world who's a professional speaker, none of those people like wing it, right? They know, you said that you know exactly how people will respond when you do something because you've done it so many times. So you know exactly how this joke's going to land and all this. Is there ever surprises though? Have you ever like told a joke and go, wow, that usually kills. What's going on with this? Is the crowds different? Because I know with comedians, they talk about different crowds, different jokes land differently. So
Sometimes that happens, but I get rid of the jokes that don't land every time. I remember, I don't remember what the joke was, but I remember about 7 or 8 years ago, I had a really funny line. I mean, I thought it was funny. I thought it was so funny. I did it about 5 times. No one ever laughed, and I never did it again. To this day, I can't even remember what the joke was. But I'm constantly honing, right? I mean, if Jerry Seinfeld, all those big comedians, they go to these little tiny clubs and they practice. There will be times when Kevin Hart, Seinfeld, those guys, they're literally in these little clubs with like 40 people, and they're reading their jokes off their notes.
Yeah,
right. They're trying them out. If they do that 5 times and nobody laughs at a joke, it's not going into the Netflix special, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
You're honing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're honing it. And so I know. And you can watch a speech of mine that I gave probably 11 years apart. I think they're 11 years apart. You could pull them both up on YouTube, hit the play button, and they are 90% the same.
Huh. Yeah, so you say that you have kind of like a plug and play speech that you have 4 main points and you add stories and audience participation things. That way you can kind of drop things as needed. Like if they say you got 30 minutes, you can drop this and adjust it. Is that pretty common for speakers? Is that the way that usually they do it?
I don't know how other people do it. It's how I would recommend they do it. So when I coach people on how to become a professional speaker, I tell them to come up with an hour-long speech. And it should include an intro, it should include a setup, it should include 4 points, and it should include an ending. And that should be about an hour. If somebody says, I only need you for 45 minutes, you drop one of your points. Okay. If they say, I need you for an hour and 20 minutes, you add a audience participation exercise or something like that. So it really is plug and play to be able to make it longer or shorter.
Very cool. Very cool. So, let's talk about the content in your speeches, the success principles. First of all, let's define success, because you bring up a really good point about success. When people think about success, they think about money. Even when I'll say the same thing. I'm like, yeah, I really want to be successful. Like, oh, I don't care about money. Money's not important to me. And I'm like, well, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about like actually being good at your craft and doing, because when you say that you ask people, who's the most successful person, they say Bill Gates, or maybe it's Jeff Bezos now. A most successful woman is Oprah. And these are people that are, billionaires and whatnot, but success is more than just money, right?
Yeah, our default definition, if I were to say to you, hey, I got this friend, he's really successful, you would probably imagine a guy in a beautiful house, driving a beautiful car, with a big job, with a big office. That's how we, by default, define success. But if you back people up for a minute and say, hey, okay, aside from money, if a guy had $20 million in the bank, but he was going on his sixth marriage, would you consider him successful? And you'd go, maybe not, right?
Right.
And so it's not just about money. Now, money's part of success, and money can be a way of measuring success. But you could have a wildly successful school teacher who wins School Teacher of the Year in America, and they might not have two nickels to rub together. Are they unsuccessful? No, I don't think they're unsuccessful. I think they're successful at impacting lives and those kinds of things. So I tend not to look at it in regard to money. I always say that true success is not the overachievement in one area, but it's the balanced achievement in all areas. We want to be healthy. We want to have a solid emotional stability. We want to be growing intellectually. We want to, be financially secure. And I think that's really success, is to be able to say, I've got a well-rounded life.
Yeah, you say character and skill are two of the most important things when you look at success. And
almost everybody focuses on skill, and I tend to focus on character, because skills you can learn.
Yeah,
character is, character, you can learn character as well. I mean, you can become convicted of something and say, I'm going to change this and not do this anymore. But skill is the thing that we tend to focus on. When I ask my audiences, I'll say, how many of you have ever been to a skill training seminar? Everybody raises their hands. Everybody has gone to a seminar to learn how to do accounting, or be a better speaker, or how to sell, or, all the skills, how to have a better marriage, all the how-tos. But then I say, how many of you have ever been to a character training seminar? Virtually no one ever raises their hand, because we tend to not really focus on character. We tend to focus on skill. And what I believe is that long-term success comes from a foundational character that allows you to be in the game for a long period of time.
So how do you work on character besides the character building seminars, or other things that you recommend people do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to really do some deep internal work. You have Jim Rohn, they always called him America's foremost business philosopher. I think you have to have a philosophy of life. You have to understand morality. You have to understand what character really is. You have to understand why it's important to always tell the truth. Being a truth teller, telling the truth is part of what I believe to be a great character. But there are a lot of people that have never really thought through how not telling the truth can affect their life. So in my seminars and in my book, The Art of Influence, actually, there's I write business fiction. They're little stories that teach life lessons. Now, in the book, Art of Influence, it's a billionaire who takes this young, recent business school graduate with him on a business trip to sort of teach him some lessons as a favor to his grandmother, who he knew was his nanny when he was growing up. And so the first stop they go to is a business that this billionaire is thinking about buying. And they come in, and the CFO comes in first, and he's sitting there, and he says, the CEO will be here any minute. And so they're waiting in the boardroom, and an admin walks in to the CFO, and he says, so-and-so wants to know if you sent that package over. And he goes, oh, I forgot. Just tell him I mailed it yesterday, and tell him I mailed it a couple days ago. It must be lost in the mail. It'll be coming soon. And then the CEO walks in, they have their business meeting, they go out to the car, and the kid that he brought along with him, he assigned him during the meeting to look through the financials and the numbers, right? So they're having their meeting, and the kid's looking through the financials. They get out to the car, and the billionaire says, what do you think? Should I buy it? And the guy goes, yeah, I mean, the numbers look great, and I think it would be a really good thing to add to your portfolio. And the guy says, oh, I would never buy that company. And he says, why not? He says, the CFO is a liar. He said, we sat there and watched him lie to a client of his. How do we know those numbers are right? How do we know those numbers are true? We don't. We've already defined the fact that the CFO is willing to lie.
Right.
Now we have to ask the question if he's willing to lie to us.
So you're saying even the little things matter on things like that. Like if you have true character, even like little lies are important.
Here's the one I always get. So if your wife walks out and says, "Does this dress make my butt look big?" What do you say?
Yeah.
Well, what you don't say is, "No, it's the cheesecake that makes your butt look big." You never want to say that.
No, that's ever. A good tip. Yeah. Yeah.
But here's what you say. You know what dress I think you look fabulous in? I think you look fabulous in that red dress. Do you want to wear that tonight? You're telling the truth, but you're not, because most people say, well, I lie if it's going to make people feel better. I just don't believe in that. Okay. I think that if you have a decent relationship with somebody, they can be honest with you. I'll say it to my wife every now and then. Does this shirt go with these pants? Like if we're going out with friends or something, should I wear this with it? Yeah. And she says, I want to wear the other one. I don't go, oh, I'm such a horrible shirt picker. How am I so bad? Yeah. I'm 54 years old. I can't pick the right shirts. Right. I just go put the other shirt on.
Yeah, there you go.
Big deal.
Yeah. So speaking of going out with friends and stuff, I like this thing you have on associations. So there's 3 different associations. Can you explain these? You have expanded associations with people, limited associations, and disassociations. I think this is like one of the most important principles that you talk about. It's one of the most important things I've ever heard.
Yeah, and Jim Rohn and I did that together. I classify everybody into one of those 3 categories: expanded associations, limited associations, or disassociations. Expanded associations are people either at your level or above you who you're going to be able to have a mutually beneficial relationship. You give to them, they give to you. Everybody, it's win-win. It's mutually beneficial. You can learn from them, grow from them, and you will invest in their life as well. Mutually beneficial. You should expand those associations to whatever degree you can. Spend as much time with those people as you can. Then you have limited associations, and limited associations are those associations with people who are not necessarily going to be really good for you. You're not going in the same direction. You don't have the same, interests, or they might even be a bad guy. I don't know. But you have to be in a relationship with them. It's your uncle who, you don't really like that much. Mm-hmm. And he always teases you. So you limit your association to him to the family reunions, right? That's when you see your uncle. Other than that, you're not calling him up, asking to go do things with him. It might be the person in the cubicle next to you. Maybe they're negative. Maybe they're just negative Nelly about everything. Well, you're not going to want to start going to lunch with that person because you don't want to let their negativity creep into your life. Right. So you have to have association with them, but you limit it to the work that has to be done with them. And then disassociations are people that are not good for you. They're not going in the same, it doesn't even necessarily mean that they're bad people. It just means they're going in the different direction. They're not somebody who's going to build you up. They're not somebody that's going to be wind beneath your wings or, wind in your sails or anything like that. And so you need to disassociate with those people, not spend time with those folks. Now, I'm not talking about, I always get these, well, what about this? Well, I'm not talking about people who you can help, right? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about a colleague relationship, a mutual relationship. If there's somebody who's having a real struggle in their life, yeah, you can stoop down and help them, give them a hand, help them, but you're not asking for them to invest in your life. I think most of us have what I call relationships of convenience. These are the people who you went to college with and they've always been your friend and so they're still your friend. And you say, well, are they good? Is your relationship good for you? Well, not really. I mean, he does this and he does that. And no, not really. Well, why are you friends with him? I've been friends with him forever. So that's why you're friends with him. Yeah. You're friends with him because you've been friends with him forever. It's kind of like Paris Hilton. They always used to say, she's famous for being famous. Well, we're friends because we're friends, right? Well, yeah. Why are you friends? Because we're friends. But is it good for you? Is it propelling you forward? And if it's not, you should disassociate. Now, I don't mean call them up and say, you know what, I've been giving some thought. You're a really rotten human being, and I don't want to see you again. I'm not suggesting that. Yeah. I'm just suggesting re-emphasizing your time spent with people who are going to be good for you. We're on limited resources of time here. We don't have time to spend with everybody. So we need to focus down to the people who we're going to have good, mutually beneficial relationships with.
And I know people that have family members, I mean, not just like a cousin or an uncle, and you talk about that limited relationship, but I know people that, their mom or their dad is so toxic to them that they have cut off relationship with their mom or dad. I mean, do you think that is sometimes beneficial? I mean, if it gets to that point where you feel like, you know what, I just can't have a relationship with you anymore, even though you're my mom or my dad.
I think there are lots of people like that. I have some friends that their dad was an alcoholic, and they went to him, the son, my friend, went to his dad and said, Dad, I love you. You are amazing in so many ways, but your alcoholism is destroying our family get-togethers. And I'm just telling you right now, either quit drinking or you will not see your grandchildren again, because I'm not going to be doing this with you because it's too toxic for my children. And to his credit, he gave up alcohol cold turkey, and they had another 10 great years together. Doesn't always work out that way. Circling back to the fact that my mother used to beat the tar out of us, I have a sister who I've not spoken to in probably 7 years. I can remember the last phone call we had with her, that I had with her. Every phone call was about how horrible my mom was. Now, 7 years ago, I was 47, and my mom had been dead for years. And I told my sister, I said, I do not want to continue having these conversations. She's dead. I know the troubles I had with her and that you had with her, but I've reconciled that. I've moved beyond it. I found a healthy spot in my life, and I don't want to rehash it with you 3 days a week. If you can't stop talking about mom, I can't continue to be in a relationship with you. And she's never called me since. And that's fine. It's fine. Because, and I would love to have a relationship with her. I'd love to, you know, find that we can talk about, that we can both be thrilled by, you know, and oftentimes I see it now with politics. I have friends who I will say they're on the other side of me politically, and God, I can't wait for these next 3 months to be over with. Although I'm concerned that once the election, I'm concerned that once the election happens, it doesn't matter who wins, half the country is going to want to burn the buildings down, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I have said to numerous friends of mine, I've said, I am begging you, please stop talking to me about this. It is going to ruin our relationship. I understand your perspective. I disagree with you. I am fully in support of you having your own opinion, and I laud that. That's great. I just disagree. We've talked about it. Anything beyond this is just going to make us mad at each other. Let's enjoy our friendship.
What a novel idea. This is genius. This is brilliant right here.
I'm telling you, Chuck, it's novel. It's novel.
It's a novel idea. All right.
That guy, I said to him, I am begging you. I'm begging you. Let's please stop talking. I
love this.
Because I like you in so many ways. I like you.
Yes.
Let's focus on that part. And he could not let up. And I finally just deleted him, and I don't have any interactions with him anymore.
So if you see that stuff on social media, because I'm sure you're on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and there's a friend that you have, do you hide them from your news feed then so you don't see their political updates?
Well, so it's interesting. I am very political. I ran for the U.S. Senate in 2010.
That's right, in 2010.
So I certainly have my opinions.
Sure.
But when I post my opinions, and most of my friends on Facebook are my opinion. Okay. And so when I post them, I will say I'm really looking for people who have different opinions. And it happened today. It happened on my feed today. And one woman who I really like, she's great, I've done business with her, she disagrees with me. She jumped on. She was respectful to me. I was respectful to her. And we were able to converse about it. Now, there's some people who will do that. And this is the hidden gem of your podcast right here. I'm going to save so many people so much angst and emotional distress. When you post something that you have a group of people that you know are just not going to like it, you can choose, when you post, you can choose send it to public, anybody can see it, friends, only your friends can see it, or there's a button that says friends accept.
There you go.
I have 20 people on that exception list, and they are the people that I know are just going to come unglued on my political posts. Okay. And once you come unglued and start screaming at me and my friends and calling us names, you go on the accept list. And then you don't have to see my beliefs, and I don't have to listen to your response to them. But I have lots of friends who disagree with me who are not on that list.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
we have respectful dialogue.
Yeah, that's what I don't mind listening to other people's opinions. I mean, that's why I have the podcast. I mean, I hear people from all different sorts of walks of life. And to me, it's fascinating. I like hearing different perspectives and different views. So that kind of helps me form my own. I mean, I have my own that I've brought up with and stuff, but it does make me think sometimes like, oh, I never thought of it from your perspective. Like, that is interesting, So I think it's interesting to hear. And otherwise, why would we have these conversations? Because, yeah.
Here's what I do. You want to freak somebody out sometime? Do this to them. When one of your friends who's diametrically opposed to you politically or religious or whatever, ask them this question. Here's what I say to people. Hey, let's do something fun. Let's take 10 minutes, the next 10 minutes, you argue my position and I'll argue your position.
Ooh, that would be fun.
And you know what? Most of them can't do it because they've never considered another position.
That's interesting.
You could take the opposite political position of mine and I could make the argument for it because I understand it. I disagree with the conclusion, but I understand the process and I can do that. And most people can't. A lot of people on my side can't. A lot of people on the other side can't. But it just means that they've never done the work to try to truly understand where the other people are coming from.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Well, speaking of politics, I was going to ask you, so you ran for the Senate before. Our governor in Arizona is, it's interesting because I'm kind of an independent, but our governor is, he's kind of hated by left, and I get updates from my left friends that don't like him, and I get updates from my right friends that don't like him. So have you thought of running for governor? That might be, there might be an opening soon.
No. I'd rather be a pontificator and write books about it.
Okay.
I got to tell you, running for politics is brutal.
Really?
It's brutal. There was an old book written back when President was the president, and it was called Blood Sport. And let me tell you, it's blood sport. These folks will find anything and everything, and they will take the good things and turn them bad, and they'll take the bad things and make you look like, the second coming of the devil. And so that's why a lot of good people don't go into politics.
Sure.
You probably remember the former CEO of T-Mobile, John Stanton. You probably remember that name from your Seattle days. He started VoiceStream. He started Western Wireless, sold them to T-Mobile, became the CEO, and now he's the primary owner of the Seattle Mariners. And John is a center-right person. He's smack dab in the middle. He's a little bit right, but not much at all. He's pretty middle of the road. He's got an incredible business career. He's got enough money that he doesn't have to ask anybody for the money to run for office. I have begged him to run for office. I've said, I even gave him the America Needs You speech. And he said, never going to do it. And in many ways, I don't blame him.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I mean, he is nice. He's kind. He's middle of the road. He's a wildly successful business guy. He's been married to the same woman for 40 years. He's got great kids. Nothing wrong with this guy. But I'll tell you what, if he threw his hat in the ring, they would find all sorts of wrong things.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier about, being a teacher or being in a lab all day is like, you might have an interest in this, but is it really something you want to spend your whole day with? Cause that's like you said, it's a rough job for sure. But, so if people,
if you're Chuck, if you're a billionaire and your option is to go spend the weekend in DC with Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, or sit on your $100 million yacht outside of Cannes, France, what are you going to choose?
I'll choose the yacht. Yeah, for sure. But you do say that people should achieve their biggest dreams. I love this philosophy too. I have the same philosophy. And I think you probably have the same philosophy as me in terms of just, trying to achieve big things and failing, and that's okay. And then learning from the failures and trying to take steps up. But how do you know when it's time to give up on something? Like at what point, if somebody wants to really, whether it's run for office or be a teacher or be an actor or a comedian or whatever, how do they know when it's time? Maybe it's time to give up on that dream and do something else.
Well, I think that the easiest answer is if it becomes intolerable or toxic to yourself. But usually when I get asked this question, I refer them to Seth Godin's book called The Dip. I think it was called The Dip.
Okay.
And it's all about how do you come to that conclusion. because you're right. Everybody's like, just never, ever, 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 never, ever quit. They always quote Winston Churchill, never, 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 never quit. Bad advice, because there are sometimes you should quit.
Yeah.
Brett Favre should have quit when he quit. Instead, he just went on and on and on and on. And I'm like, please, just go get some counseling. You need to quit. But that book does a pretty good job on helping people come to to answer that question. Should I quit?
Yeah. Because it seems like it does take time to grow something, to do something. You have to give it. I mean, it's got to, for a lot of times it is years, like maybe years to you reach a level of success that you want to achieve. But, at some point, if someone's doing it 5-10 years and you haven't achieved success, maybe it's
I'll tell you what, I was talking yesterday to somebody, can't remember who, maybe one of my daughters. I was telling her about William Wilberforce. Do you know the name William Wilberforce?
No. Who's that?
William Wilberforce was, he was in the, whatever they call him, House of Lords or whatever in England. He was part of the legislature.
Okay.
21 years in a row, he brought before that legislative body a bill or whatever they call him in the UK to abolish slavery. 21 years in a row, he tried to abolish slavery. On the 22nd year, it passed.
Wow.
So it took him 22 years. I look at a guy like Mark Victor Hansen, my friend Mark Victor Hansen, co-wrote a book with a guy named Jack Canfield. They wrote a book, small little book called Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
They were passed on by over 100 publishers. They finally got a little tiny health publishing company. I don't even, it was like United Health Books or something, like some little rinky-dink publisher that published books about health. And they thought, well, chicken soup, people drink chicken soup when they're sick. Yeah, we'll do it. That series has now sold just under 600 million copies.
Oh, yeah, that's a great story. That also reminds me that, have you heard the Colonel Sanders story? You know that one? That guy was like, what was he, like in his 70s or something?
Well,
and
I know parts of it.
He was driving around some beat up car
when he started.
67, sorry, yeah. And he knocked on all these doors trying to sell his recipe. I can't remember what the number was, but it was like 10,000 people rejected him. I don't know how true it is, but I mean, it was clearly a lot of people had said no until finally somebody said, okay, sure. So, I mean, if you have the tenacity of a 67-year-old man, so I think that's pretty inspiring.
Well, I have a friend of mine. I have a friend of mine in Seattle. He graduated in the same class as John McCain. He's very old, from the Naval Academy. And he used to run a company called Data.io. And Data.io was the biggest tech company in Seattle. This guy was king of tech in Seattle. And in the late 70s, early 80s, he and his CFO went to a restaurant in Bellevue to meet with a couple guys who were looking for an investment in their company. They went in, they sat there. I think they ate at 12 Baskets in Bellevue, and right down by the Bellevue Mall. And these two young guys offered him 10% of their company for $1 million. And he looked at these guys and he said, well, we'll talk about it. We'll get back to you. They walked out to the parking lot. They got in the car. He said, no sooner did both of our doors shut, we turned and looked at each other and we laughed our asses off. That was the funniest thing ever. These two long-haired hippies wanted $1 million for 10% of their company. They're valuing this company at $10 million. It's outrageous.
Wow.
They had just had lunch with Bill and Paul Allen. He could have owned 10% of Microsoft. But you know what he said? He said, I would make the same decision today, because nobody knew that it was going to become Microsoft. But what if they'd have quit? What if they said the smartest guy in technology in Seattle just said, we were fools.
Yeah.
We should just quit. He would have never become the richest man in the world, now the second richest man in the world.
That is crazy. What other motivational speakers do you follow now? Like, are you familiar with Rob Dial, the Mindset Mentor? That's one of my favorite podcasts.
I'm not.
Oh, that's a good one. Or is there other people that you're following right now?
Like I said, there's 20,000 of them.
Yeah, true.
I like, David Goggins. I just read his book.
Oh, he's great.
I have a lot of friends. My friends are people that I read. I'm actually rereading this book right now, Self Matters by Phil McGraw. I'm not a huge Phil McGraw fan, but that's one of the best personal development books ever written. It was his first book, Self Matters.
Okay.
But I got lots of great friends. Waldo Waldman's a good buddy of mine. He's one of the top speakers in America today. Jason Hewlett, Phil Jones from the UK is a sales trainer. There's a lot of good guys. Old standards like Mark Sanborn is a good buddy of mine. There's a lot of great speakers out there today.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I did a men's mastermind a couple of years ago. We went through Lewis Howes' book, Masks of Masculinity. And it was a really good book about being a man and the masks that we wear. So I try to read a wide variety of different kinds of people.
That's great.
But I don't follow, like, I listen to everything they do or read everything they wrote.
So I always end with a charity. I can't remember if I told you that is there a charity or nonprofit that you are passionate about promoting or that you give your time to?
Yeah, I mean, anything that a lot of my stuff is through, church or whatever. I do a lot from missions and things like that. I just started working, you're down here in the Phoenix area. There's an area called Sunny Slope. In Wenatchee, Sunny Slope is the really nice neighborhood. Wenatchee, Washington's the nice neighborhood. Yeah. In Phoenix, it's the really not so nice neighborhood. And right before COVID hit, we started working with a group down there. We go down on Sunday mornings. We feed breakfast. We do a little church service for them. We give them basic hygiene things and put together packages and stuff like that. So we help out there. Anything really to do with kids. I've just started helping a group that's doing dog rescue stuff. So, really just trying to give back in a wide variety of areas. But I always tell people, just find out something you're passionate about, something that makes you cry. That's a good thing. Like, I know, and I realized this years and years ago, there's a lot of people that are in hardships and I know that it's hard, but it doesn't move me. But when I see little kids in other countries that they've got that distended stomach because they can't even get a bowl of rice for the day, those are the things that always, sort of turn my heart a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact, when my kids were growing up, they were always like, "Dad, there's nothing we could buy you that you wouldn't already buy yourself. If you wanted it, you'd already have it because you've got the money to buy it." So for years and years, my kids got a magazine or what do you call it? Like a little pamphlet or brochure or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, from one of two groups, either Heifer International, Red Heifer International, or Compassion International. And I would tell them, buy me a gift by spending however much money you want on one of these things that helps people in the third world. So each group, World Vision, Compassion International, Red Heifer International is a non-religious one. The first two are sort of religious oriented. Red Heifer International is a non-religious one.
Okay.
But the ones that World Vision and those guys do, it's not like they require religion in order to be helpful.
Yeah.
But you can buy a goat for people. You can buy beehives for people. You can buy animals that will produce either meat or milk or honey or any of the kinds of things. And so for years and years, my kids would buy a goat for some poor person in a third world and give it to me as a gift.
That is awesome. And love it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need another watch. I don't need a couple cigars. I don't need a bottle of liquor. I can get those things myself. But if you want to spend your $50 and buy some woman in a village somewhere a couple of beehives that she can start producing and selling honey, that's fantastic.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, you've done so many amazing things. People need to go to your website. That's where everything is, right? Is that where all your links are for Facebook and social media and your YouTube channel? You have a YouTube channel. I've watched some of your videos. They're great. They're fabulous. They could hire you if they have the money, right?
Yeah, I do personal coaching. I do 6-month and 12-month coaching programs for
speaking. They want you to come speak at their company, right? I mean, you don't come cheap though.
Well, you know what? During the COVID, with the virtual ones, I'm really flexible in my virtual ones because I get to sit here in my office. Like as soon as we're done, I can go back and do something else. I don't have to get on an airplane. So yeah, I'm more than happy to do virtual kinds of stuff. Yeah. So
you're doing virtual speeches and getting paid for that via Zoom. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, because I'm guessing the world needs some motivation right now because people they're stressed out. They're giving up and they're angry, like you said. The election coming up too, and yeah. My
number one speech right now I'm giving is thriving in tough and challenging times. How do you not just survive, but how do you thrive?
That's great. I'll have to listen to more of that. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. Everybody needs to follow Chris on social media. You're on Facebook. Are you on Twitter too? I saw you on Instagram.
Yeah, Twitter at Chris Widener,
Okay.
Facebook and Instagram are at Chris Widener Speaker, and then chriswidener.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye-bye. Such an energizing conversation with Chris Widener. What a smart and insightful guy. Just dropping lots of pearls of wisdom there. So definitely follow Chris on social media. Check out his website, get his books. You can even watch some of his speeches on YouTube for free. Speaking of YouTube, I started uploading my episodes there. So that's just another way to get the podcast. And we're going to start having video for some of these episodes as well. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. If you've never listened to my show before, I recommend checking out the 50th episode that I just posted, which is a clips highlights, where I take 1-minute clips from each of the interviews that I've had. And that was a lot of fun to do. If you enjoy the show, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you really want to go above and beyond, you can write me a review on iTunes, and that'll really help me out. So thank you so much, and have a great day or night. And remember to shoot for the moon.